In our next tutorial, we will show you how to edit another page on your website. Upon logging in and being greeted with your dashboard, we will use our mouse cursor to hover over pages, and we will simply select all pages. Next, we will let the page load, and in this case, we will be wanting to edit the Ugu page. We can do this by scrolling down until we find the Ugu district. Alternatively, we're also able to search for Ugu in the search bar. As you can see, I've searched for Ugu and we have located it. Hovering over it, we have all our options as before. We will simply select Edit with Elementor, as this is the page builder we are using, and we will allow the page to load fully before we continue. As you can see, the page is now loaded, and again we will use our mouse cursor to simply navigate across the page to understand how it is laid out. As you can see here, we have one section with one column inside it, with two widgets inside of that. Scrolling down, we have another section with a column and columns inserted within there, totaling 3 columns. Inside of those columns, we have more widgets. Next, we will simply use our mouse cursor to highlight the section we wish to edit. By selecting that, the window on the left will appear. Again, as our previous tutorial, we will start with the layout. Here we can change the content width, as well as use the slider, as you can see here. Next, we can change our column gap, our height, vertical alignment, and so forth. Our parallax and particles you do not need to worry about, as this is already set up. Moving on to the structure, we can see that this section only has one column inside it, which I will get to in a bit. Moving on to the styling section, we will start with our background. Again, we can choose to add a background color, as shown here, or we can choose to add a background image, as seen here. As you can see, it has loaded the image, however it is very large. That is where these additional options come into effect. Here we can choose a position center. We can make our attachment scroll, which means it scrolls with the page, or we can make it fixed, which means the background image will stay in the same spot while scrolling. Next, we will put that back to fixed, and we can change our repeat to no repeat. Then we will change our size to auto. As you can see, the default is auto. We can choose cover, custom, contain, or custom. As you can see with the custom, you can choose the width of your image. Scrolling back up, I will remove this and we will set it back to default. As you can see, we are also able to choose a hover effect, and by choosing a red color, we will see that once we hover over this section, it will turn red. As you can see, only the above section has turned red, because that is the section that we are busy editing. I will now remove this red, and we will continue. Moving on to the background overlay. Here we can choose again an overlay, either a color, or we can choose an actual image. By choosing an image, we will select Insert Media, and we will see the image has appeared. Again, we have our additional options, as well as we can change the strength of the transparency of the image. As you can see, we can make it more transparent or less transparent. I will remove that, and we will continue to the border. Again, as our previous tutorial, we will simply select our border type, insert a border radius, and we will choose our border color. Once we are happy, we will now set that back to default, and again the same can be done for the hover effect. We will now come to the shape divider, and you can see we will start with the top. Here we will choose the type as mountains, and we will choose the color as red so that we can see it. As you can see, it is folded in the shape divider, and we're able to change the width of it as well as the height. We will then now set that back to default, and I will show you the bottom. It works exactly the same. We will choose our type, our color, and it will appear at the bottom of that section. We will set that back to default, and we will continue. Our typography you do not need to worry about, as it's already set up. As well as the advanced section, you do not need to worry about this, as it is currently set up for all pages. Moving on, we will go from our column, my apologies, we will move on from a section to a column. As you can see here, we have one column with 3 columns inserted inside of it. Again, we can simply edit this column by selecting the edit option. Here, we will have all the options on the left, including the layout settings, as well as the styling settings for that section. Here we can change the background type, the border type, and so forth. Moving on from our column, we will now edit a widget. Again, we will use our mouse cursor to navigate until we find the thin blue border indicating a widget. By selecting the edit option, the window on the left will appear. Here you can see that we are currently editing an image widget, and it shows that we can choose a new image if required. By clicking on the image, it will open our media library where we are able to choose a new image. I will not change this at the moment, and we will simply close the window. Next, we can choose the size of the image. If I was to set it to thumbnail, we will see that the image has changed. We will then set it back to full, and we will continue. Next, we can choose the alignment of the image. However, since we set it to full, this will not make a difference. Next, we can choose to add a caption, as well as a link to the image. Moving on to the styling section, here we can change the width of the image, the max width of the image, as well as the height of the image. We will simply delete this and set it back to default. Next, we have come to our transparency. We can choose it to be normal or hover, and we can choose to change this by simply moving the slider. If I was to select hover and make it thin, we will see that once we hover over, the image becomes transparent, unlike the others. We will now set that back to default and continue. Again, we have the option to add a border, and as you can see, the border only applies to the element that we are editing, in this case, the image widget. We will select that back to default, and we will continue. The advanced section, again, you do not need to worry about this section as it is already set up for you. That is how you would edit a page. We will simply scroll through and use our mouse cursor to navigate and highlight the sections we wish to edit. Once we are happy with all the changes made, we will simply locate Update at the bottom left of the screen and select it. That is how you would edit a different page on your website.